What's going on, NBA Nation? It's your guy, Alex Gutierrez here, aka the Stratocaster, and we got to discuss a lot of these offseason signings by these teams throughout the league. And who better to join me today than SNY New York Post's very own Dexter Henry. Dexter, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Alex. What's up, man? Always glad to talk some NBA hoops, especially with you. Usually I'm asking you the questions, but glad we get to do it the other way, man. It should be fun.
That's right. I got questions for you, Dexter. I need some answers
There we
today.
go.
I need some answers about what's happening in the league, whether it's these offseason signings, these potential trades that can go down, and these extensions, man. There's a lot going on in the league right now. But let's start off with the number one topic, Damian Lillard, because he finally did it. Loyalty card has finally ran out. He wants out of Portland. What are your thoughts on Damian Lillard asking out and his top destination being Miami?
So my first thoughts are like, man, this took too long, right? Like both sides knew that this needed to happen a couple years ago. And I mean that in multiple ways, right? Like for Portland, they just needed to hit the reset button on this. From the time they traded CJ McCollum, understood it was going to work in the backcourt with two small guards. It was time for them to move on. And for Dame, it was also time for him to move on and try to go to a place where he could actually win, because it was not going to happen in Portland. We all knew this for some time. As far as him wanting to go to Miami, look, it would be a good fit for him in Miami. You know, if you could pair him with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, I think that would be a good fit. I think what's interesting here is the hang up on both sides. Miami doesn't want to give up everything. They don't want to do it. They're talking about leading with a package with Tyler Hero. Portland, they don't want to get fleeced here. I think they want to do right by Dame, and I understand that from both sides, but they also need to do what's best for them in the long term so they can actually have a good rebuild. And it's funny because Brooklyn was the other team that was mentioned in terms of that he might be interested in, although Miami's a top destination. We've heard that. Brooklyn actually has more assets to give Portland than Miami does. And I think it's going to be a game of hardball. Dame really wants Miami. Miami definitely wants him. You see the Heat fans on Twitter complaining, crying if they don't get him. It's sad. But yeah, I've seen it. And you see Portland fans being mad that Dame wants out. It's a lot of angry people on Twitter.
I don't get that.
That's a whole nother thing, right? I don't understand that either, Alex. But I think that you've got to, there's going to be some hardball here. You're going to see that. You've seen all these leaks about Miami asked for the medicals and Portland wants this and what's that. Portland, and here's the thing, you can't be mad at Portland. Portland has to play hardball here. Yes. If he's going to go to Miami, they got to make sure that they get the most that they want out of rebuild. And that's just business. That's just business in the NBA. I think it ultimately ends with Dame going to Miami, but I think that Miami's going to have to pay a price, as they should. And I think Portland's going to try to get the most that they can out of them in terms of young players on tradable contracts, because Miami just doesn't have the draft assets that Brooklyn does. So I think they're going to try to get as many players or tradable contracts that they can out of them to make this work.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dexter. I mean, look, Portland needs to do what as you said, they need to do what's best for them as an organization moving forward. You got Scoot Henderson over there. You got Anthony Simons, right? You got Shadon Sharp. So you want to make sure that they should want to make sure they're building a nice young core to move forward for this future. And they don't want to just get no draft capital in return, because look, just from when they hired Mike Schmitz of ESPN, right? Draft analyst, it was screaming that they wanted to move in that direction. It was just, when was Dame ready to just move on, go to the next phase of his career, go out and compete for a title? So now here we are. But for Portland, there's also other teams that are out there. There's talks about Philly, there's talks about San Antonio. You mentioned Brooklyn. Would you expect the Jazz or Philly to be in that running for Damian Lillard, or do you really think that it's just down between Miami and Brooklyn? Because that's what he talked about on a podcast recently, right? So where do you expect that?
So what I expect is, look, I think it really does become between what he wants, right, with Miami and Brooklyn. But Portland would be stupid to not do their due diligence and talk to these other teams and feel these calls from other teams that are probably calling and say, hey, what's up? Can we get in with Dame? Can we do this? And listen, if they get a better offer from a team like the Sixers, who obviously there's a tradable piece with Harden, and maybe you get a 3-way deal and they're looking for somebody to replace Harden, and it's the best deal for Portland, they got to do what's best for Portland. I think too far in this relationship, and this is what I was alluding to before, is that neither side, I don't think they've been afraid or Dame was afraid to leave Portland. I just think nobody wanted to do wrong by the other side. And I still think they're trying to do right by each side. And I think at some point, this to be understood that this is business. Dame wants to do what's best for him, which I support. Portland also has to want to do what's best for them, which I also support. And so, yes, I don't think there's smoke to some of the stuff you've heard about Utah trying to get in, or San Antonio. San Antonio, while I see what they're trying to do there, I don't think it makes sense because Dame doesn't fit their timeline. But if you put him next to Big Vic, and everybody thinks Wembanyama is what they think he is, then yes, maybe that could work, but it doesn't really fit the timeline. Utah is interesting. Minnesota, we've heard about, but they now have 3 max players, so that'll be interesting. We'll get into that later. Portland has to talk to other teams, and they got to let Miami know, and this may be part of the hardball that I'm talking about, that, hey, you're not the only destination here. We're going to do what's best for us, and that might get Miami to come up off of a little bit more of something that they have. So this is the NBA. You're going to see a lot. This is a time when there's a lot of lies, Alex. Yes. You're going to hear a lot of people.
Yes.
A lot of people sending smoke information here. Agents are working and leaking this and that. So believe half of what you see and hear and all that stuff. But there's going to be some of that to raise the price on what is actually going to be a deal. And it's all gamesmanship. It's all part of the game, man. So I do think Portland wouldn't be unwise to not talk to other teams, to not talk to the Utahs and the Minnesotas and the San Antonios to see what they can get there. They need to know, if you're going to make a trade, right, you want to know what the market is and what other teams are willing to give up. So if you know that, then you can go back to Miami and say, hey, we can get a better deal here and see what they're willing to give up. So it's one big game of chicken, and we'll see who blinks first, man. Like, we'll see. But Portland's got to talk to other teams. They have to. They got to.
For sure, for sure. But do you think, because, we also talk about, Portland want to do right by Dame. Do you think Dame was right to then say, I want to leave after Portland just extended Jeremy Grant to a 5-year, $160 million deal? Do you think that was right? Because I see some conversation amongst NBA Twitter saying where's the loyalty in that, saying, well, you just extended Grant for this enormous contract for his position, for his role. Is that really fair to Portland? What are your thoughts about that?
So here's my thing with the Jeremy Grant situation. I didn't think it made sense for the Trailblazers to sign Grant to that number anyway, whether Dame was going to leave or not, right? Like that's just kind of where I am. Like, it's not that I don't like Jeremy Grant as a player. I do, actually. I just think at that number, the 5 years, and the length of the contract, I guess it's more of that, the length of the contract that they signed him to. That's it. So I feel like that wasn't a move, because and this is where it goes to your point that you made about once they hired Mike Schmidt. What direction were you going in Portland? What were you doing? I put that more in the organization than I do Dame, to be honest, right? What was the direction they're going to? We know Dame had the meeting last week with Portland, sat down with Joe Cronin, and they supposedly talked. I got to think they talked about what direction they were going in, and they probably had to tell him, look, we're bringing back Jeremy Grant. And they did. So I don't put the blame on Dame in this whatsoever. It sounded like they were going to bring back Jeremy Grant no matter what it was going to be, which, again, I don't think for those years was a right move, whether you were rebuilding or you were staying with Dame. I don't think it made sense. It really just didn't make sense at all whatsoever. But once they did it and Dame asked out, it is what it is, because I got to think that even if they told Dame that, Dame had to ask. I'm assuming here, I don't know any inside information on this. Dame had to ask, well, what's your plan beyond this? And it sounds to me like Portland's like, oh, we're going to have it with you and the young guys. Dame already said he didn't want to play with these young guys and be part of this rebuilding, especially with a Jeremy Grant. So that wasn't going to work. I'm not mad at Dame for asking out. And for the people who are mad at the players asking out, man, other situations, I know he's a superstar player, but teams will trade you at any time for what they want. They're going to do what's best for them. So can't be mad at Dame doing what's best for him. It is what it is. And again, put this on the Blazers. Sounds like they were going to bring Jeremy Grant back regardless, again, which I don't think was a good move. Why are we criticizing Dame, but we're not criticizing the Blazers for not having a solid and concrete rebuilding plan?
Excellent points, Dexter. And I agree. When you say, you mentioned Trailblazers wanted to bring back Jeremy Grant, and even when Like the number is just so massive to me that it doesn't make sense. I don't mind bringing the player back because I think you need good players. You need veteran experience for such a young team. And just to have good players also helps the development process of young players as well, right? You need someone who's
Yep.
able to contribute on the floor. I get that whole aspect. But to pay him like on an average of 30 million a year, I don't know where in the whole NBA world that you're going to say Jeremy Grant 30 million a year. That's what we need to add to a team right now. And this is not disrespecting him as a player. This is not disrespecting like his abilities. But if you're thinking about a team that's going to trade for somebody, if you're thinking about moving off of him at some point, I haven't seen enough of Jeremy Grant as that guy to demand 30 million a year, right? Because let's just even look at around other players around the league, right? You look at Jalen Brunson, who's on a good contract. You look at what who's another good player. You look at what even Paul George is making at 40 something, right? Like I'm thinking like in between there, like is Grant better than what Brunson gives? No. And is he anywhere what Paul George can be at his peak? No. And it's like, so why is 30 million like the number that you have to give him? I think that's the bigger of the hang up. That's the big hang up. And I'm all for players getting their money, but if you're just thinking
Yeah.
from a team building standpoint of what you got to do moving forward and just thinking, is this contract flippable? That's my biggest question mark.
So here's the thing for Portland, right? Like to me about what has to happen for them moving forward, what they had to hope for. Now that I know it's not official till Thursday, but if they're going to commit to Jeremy Grant, you got to hope that that contract could not be as bad in 2 to 3 years, depending on what happens with the cap and how much it goes up. Let's say the cap ends up in 3 years. Let's say it's somewhere around 190 to 195 million dollars, right? Now his percentage of what he is in the cap for your team is not as big as it was, and then he becomes a little bit more tradable. But there's a lot of ifs there. There are projections that in 4 to 5 years, the cap could be over $205 million to $210 million. That's possible. And then it doesn't look so bad. But the key is, in what you're talking about, Alex, is what happens in those 3 to 4 years that we're talking about, right? Like, what flexibility do you have with your team, and what are you paying him as? We saw Jeremy Grant as a number one option on a bad Detroit Pistons team, and he put up some numbers because somebody has to on a bad team.
Yep.
But he's not that dude. Jeremy Grant's probably best suited as the third best player on a really good team. And that's fine. Again, I don't think we're giving any shade to Jeremy Grant. We want to see the players get their money, all that. But from a team building perspective, if you're Portland, you got to hope now that you have the flexibility to trade him and he'll still will have value. Or is he going to sort of get further exposed and say, that's a lot of money for what he brings to the table. And in the next 2 years, you're not able to really move off of that deal. That's the thing. I think 4 to 5 years down the road, you probably will. Ideally in 4 if the cap goes up a significant amount. But yeah, I didn't like it. And also, he doesn't fit the timeline of the rest of your young guys. That's actually the really biggest thing to me. He doesn't fit the timeline for the rest of your young guys. So yeah, maybe there's a sign and trade involved that we don't know about yet or something like that. But cap space is running out for them to do that. So from other teams. So it'll be interesting.
Absolutely. And once again, NBA Nation, we are talking to Dexter Henry. He is a sports anchor for the New York Post and SNY. Also update anchor for WFAN 660 and CBS Sports Radio. You can also find him on the NBA Exchange. Now, Dexter, we have a lot of free agency moves that occurred this past weekend. Friday, 6 p.m. I was expecting a tidal wave of reports from Sham and Woj, but it was just kind of nice, even flow. Saturday, as a Knicks fan, you and I, there's more news to be reported, but let's just talk about the league at wide for a second. What is one move? Let's talk about some moves that we liked. What move did you like that you saw that occurred this weekend for any team?
Yeah, so this is one that's going to get a lot of talk, and it's interesting because people are going to criticize on both sides because of the number. But I actually really do like Fred VanVleet to the Rockets. I actually like that. Did they overpay here? Is he a max player? The answer is no, he's not. But sometimes, especially with this new CBA and how you've got to spend money to get above the floor, you got to spend money to get above the floor. Fine. I think where the Rockets are, trying to reset the culture that they're trying to do now with Ime Udoka, I think it's a fine signing. Yeah, it's a bit of an overpay. I do like that it's only 3 years. I'll say that. I like that. I think the length matters here. It's
Mhm.
only 3 years, but I think he's a guy he's won a championship. He's going to be a stabling presence for some of those young guys. You get the ball out of Kevin Porter Jr.'s hands, which is a good thing down
Mhm.
there. I think this helps Jalen Green. I think this helps Jabari Smith. I think it helps a lot of these players become a little bit more stable. So getting a point guard that's heady, that's tough, it's going to come in there is good. The Rockets were going to have to overpay probably more than anybody else was, but I still actually think it's a fine signing because I think this impacts the culture. And that's what Ime Udoka is going to try to do down there, impact and change that culture. I think that's fine. And if you look at the signings they made, whether it's VanVleet, and then you also add Dillon Brooks, which, yes, I know people are going to say too, Dillon Brooks, that might be one I have a little bit of a problem with. Not because Dillon Brooks, fantastic on the ball defender, but we know, folks, that he can shoot you out of a game. We know that can happen. As we've seen it in the playoffs, and sometimes he can get off. They overpaid for him too. Now that's one where I think with the cap going up, it won't look as bad in a little bit of 2 years, and it'll be fine. And if he's a headache, I think they can move off of that. But I like what the Rockets did there with VanVleet. That's the one signing I think on day one. At first, the number I was like, oh wow. But when you think about the impact of what you think he can have on that organization, I think I like that signing for them. I think it's a good culture changing signing for them. So that was one I liked on Friday that I saw.
I like the Rockets signing of Fred VanVleet as well. As you said, leadership, point guard. I had a similar this is what I should say. This is what I said for Jalen Brunson last season when the Knicks acquired him. Everyone's whether or not he was considered a needle mover, then it's like, he's not the final piece. He's not going to take it over the top. Obviously, it was a under promise, over deliver situation with Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. But I said, even for the young guys, you need a stable presence. Point guard is a very difficult position to develop. It usually takes about 4 to 5 years. Not everyone can come in like a John Morant and really just impact the team right away. So signing someone like Brunson for the Knicks, it helped guys like Grimes quickly really get into their roles and really help them flourish, right? Even help Julius Randle, just because, once again, you need good players to help all the other players develop. It just, a rising tide raises all ships, right? That's kind of what happens when you have a good player on a good team, on a developing team, I should say. So that's how I feel about Fred VanVleet for this Houston Rockets team that's very young. It was the blind leading the blind. You didn't really have a solid veteran presence there, which is what they needed. You saw Eric Gordon want to get out of there. It was Silas who was coaching the team. He didn't have a strong control. I think with a guy like Ime Udoka, you see what he did out in Boston, trying to hold players accountable. Having someone like that, plus VanVleet, who could be his extension. And even if it's funny or questionable about Dillon Brooks, I think Dillon Brooks' defensive intensity, I think he may learn from what happened with Memphis, and I think Ime Udoka will hold him more accountable. But you can have that type of like gritty presence on a team that could be necessary for veteran leadership, and I think he could help out for the Rockets. My question is just with these guys, with signing Dillon Brooks, Fred VanVleet, and then you move off of KJ Martin, who goes over to the Clippers, right? For 2 second rounders. I'm just wondering what the lineups are going to be. I wonder how everything's just going to shake out. But it's a young team that you can get excited about. I'm happy that they didn't go after Brook Lopez, because I do like Sengun for that team, and it was just
me too.
Like it should be a fun team. I could see them moving in the right direction, being competitive. I don't know where they're going to end like wind wise, but it should be a good team.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't shock me if I'm not going to jump up and say the Rockets are going to make the playoffs. I'm not going to do that, but it wouldn't shock me if they were fighting for a playing spot at the end of the season. That I think a lot of that has to do with how highly I think of Ime Udoka as a coach, number one, and two, how much I actually think the impact of Fred VanVleet will be. And I think you made a great point there, Alex, too. Dillon Brooks, his intensity is going to rub off. The thing I am concerned about Dillon Brooks, and you hit the nail on the head, I think there too, is does he learn from the situation? I think too often we look at players and be like, hey, they messed up over here. He was immature over here. Maybe he's humbled a bit. Maybe he's learned. Maybe somebody like Ime Udoka is a coach that can get through to him. People can grow and adapt and change. I don't think Dillon Brooks is going to become a sharpshooter overnight. I don't think so. But maybe he can calm down with the shot selection, because that's a lot of it with him. It's not that he's terrible. It's the shot selection, and that sometimes he'll start feeling himself a little bit too much, and shoot your way out of a game. So, but I think those are guys that can contribute to winning and change that culture. And I think that's what you need with a team. You brought up Jalen Brunson. You saw what he did in the Knicks last year, and the Knicks were more of a stabilizing situation, but he's also a leader and helps to change that culture. And you talked about moving the needle, Alex. I think a lot of times in the NBA, fans think that every team is a one trade away or one person that just moves the needle. And a lot of the development in the NBA isn't like that. It's smaller moves over time that you change the culture, you grow internally, you make this one move. And I'm sure we'll get to this later with the Knicks, and you build, and it's not just one move. The Nuggets, they won a championship this year. They didn't make this one move at this trade deadline or something that put them over the top. It was years of building what they had and being patient and not panicking. And I think the Rockets are at the start of this process, like some other teams. And, we'll see how it plays out for them. But I do like the FVV, man. I think that was a solid move for them. Solid move. Big loss for Toronto, but solid move for them.
Absolutely. But let's look on the flip side of that, right? You lose Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors. And I love how Woj said replacement in with Dennis Schroeder. They also have Jakob Poeltl, who's coming back. McDaniels agrees. Jalen McDaniels agrees to a 2-year deal with the Toronto Raptors as well. What are your thoughts about the Raptors? Do you think they take a step back? How do you feel about their signings this offseason?
The Raptors, man, it's like, where are they? Because I think a lot of that has to do with like what happens with Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, bringing back Poeltl on that money, which is he got 4 for $80, I believe, if I remember correctly, 4 for $80 for Poeltl.
Yep.
It's fine. It's just, where are they? Like, are they better than a play-in team right now? I don't think so. There's a new head coach in. There was some talk I heard around the league that, the stuff between Nick Nurse and some of the players, his message was getting tired. They weren't hearing him. So now they have a new voice. There's talent there. Scotty Barnes is obviously very talented, although he regressed a little bit last year. We know what Pascal Siakam is. We know what OG Anunoby is, although there's noise that OG Anunoby wants a bigger role offensively. He wants his role expanded a little bit more offensively. It might be looking for a new home. I just don't know that they have an identity anymore. And Masai has always been looking to make the big swing and not committed, and they lost FEV now. And so Dennis Schroeder is not Fred VanVleet. Let's just be very clear about that. Dennis Schroeder is not Fred. He's solid. I thought he had a good bounce back year with the Lakers, and good to see him get his money in a shorter term deal. And I think he'll be fine, but he's not Fred VanVleet. I don't know, Alex. Like, I wish I had more to say than that, because it's like, I don't know where the Raptors are really right now. It's like, would it shock me if they were like in the play-in and got the AC? No, I wouldn't. But are they a lock for that? No, I don't think so either. I think they have to figure out what their identity is. The problem with them is they've got a lot of long guys, which is what they've had. Not a great shooting team, especially now losing Fred VanVleet. They are bringing back Gary Trent with an extension. Not a lot of great shooting, not a lot of great depth anymore. So I don't love them. I don't think they're scaring anybody in the East. They probably need to tear down. I think I do. I really think they probably need to tear down when you think about it, because who's like there's no clear number one option on that team right now. Siakam, good, but not that. And Anunoby probably best served as your third best player. Poeltl's not Poeltl, nice player, solid defensive center, but they're just not a team I think that really scares me right now. I hope I'm not wrong. And then in January, the Raptors are like second in the Atlantic Division or something. I look foolish, but I just don't know what the identity of that team is right now, especially with the new coach. There's a lot of change. But I think this is a team where Masai wants to try to give it one more run. But I think if they're not where they think they should be by the trade deadline next year, it wouldn't shock me if they were sellers and they started trying to blow this thing up and trying to build more around Scotty Barnes.
And we see that there's already rumors about Siakam being on the block, right? Yep. We know about Trent Jr. for the picking up his contract. OG Anunoby. We know that Masai really values him and is looking for a haul if he's traded. Toronto is just in such a weird spot. I agree with you. I have no idea what to make of this team at all. I think we've seen enough as Dennis Schroeder as a lead guard, and it's just not that. So really a step back for this team, unless they believe Malachi Flynn is going to take another step in his development, but he was in and out for parts of the season last year. So I don't know where you're going to get that. Talk about shooting. They added Grady Dick to go along with Gary Trent Jr. as to adding some shooting depth, but it's just a weird team. It's a really, really weird team. I don't really know what to make of this. I feel like Masai is really, it's one thing to, we knew Kawhi wanted to leave. He wasn't going to stay there. I get that. But now you're losing Fred VanVleet and got nothing in return for him either. This is, from my perspective, that's just poor asset management. Like, there's no way you should have let Fred VanVleet just walk in free agency without getting anything in return. And I don't know if this was just him being too stuck in his own way, saying, I was so successful with the Kawhi trade that I can't make this next move, because if I do, what will be thought of me? What will this team be? How do I build after this? I feel like there's just too much in the air right now. And you saying to strip it down, it's just interesting because you have Scotty Barnes, and that's supposed to be your focal point of this team. I wonder if he takes that next step, because part of last season, he didn't look like that guy you should be building around, So for Toronto, this is just, it's a very weird situation. Very weird situation. Very weird team to really gauge what they could do this upcoming year.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if they put it all together, I think they could be a lower seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. But I think there's just too much influx. I think you will see the impact. If we're talking as much about the impact that we could see with FEV having in Houston, you got to also talk about the impact of him leaving Toronto.
Absolutely.
And what that means to that organization too. And I do think there's an impact. They will miss him sorely, because Dennis Schroeder, while he is a nice stopgap lead guard, which is what he's going to be in the situation, that's fine. He's not Fred VanVleet. And so I think they're going to miss that guy a lot up there. And Masai, I think by the deadline, is going to have some tougher decisions to make than he did at this deadline. And you're right. You bring up a good point, Alex. They probably should have traded him at last year's deadline, because at least you could have got something for Fred VanVleet. Now you've had two players from that championship team who've gone for nothing. Granted, you got a championship, so it is what it is. In what it is, so it's fine.
It is what it is, for sure. Before I reset, I got to go through the Eastern Conference standings right now just to gauge how murky the situation is with Toronto, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously this is like a way, way far in advance prediction, because still moves are being made, all this type of stuff. But let's just go through the top 6 teams. It's the Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, Cavs, Knicks, Nets. 7 was Hawks, 8 was Miami, 9 was Chicago, 10 were the Raptors. Then from there on, it was Pacers, Wizards, Magic, Hornets, Pistons, right? All in the East. I don't know about you, Dexter, but I could legitimately see Toronto not even being in the play-in, with whether it be Washington, even though that team is it's interesting. I think it'll be a spicy team to watch, with Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma being your lead dog scoring wise. But I would still even think that that team would still compete with a team like the Raptors, right? And just make it a little bit more interesting. Even the Orlando Magic, for their talent, Paolo Banchero taking another year in his development, right? You got Franz Wagner over there too, who's really good. I think that team could take another step forward as well. So, and even if you look at the Indiana Pacers, you get a full season of Tyrese Halliburton. That team was competing 7-6, 6-7 spot as well. So I don't know. Toronto, I'm looking at the Eastern Conference. You let me know what you think out of all these teams, but it's very likely they don't even make the play-in.
Yo, but I'm listening to what you're saying there, and I think you're actually questioning, hey, are they better than the Magic right now? I don't know. Are they better than the Pacers, who just added Obi Toppin and Tyrese Halliburton another year, and Mathurin another year on his belt, scoring off the bench, and Nembhard, and
you got Jarris Walker over there too. Jarris Walker, he could be a good rookie.
Yeah, and here's the other thing in those situations where I'm going to give an advantage. Rick Carlisle's a fantastic coach. I think they played hard for the first part of the season. I think you'll see the Pacers play harder. They're not going to be a walkover every night. There's a lot of parity in the NBA, so there are no really walkovers every night. But does Detroit take a leap with Monty Williams? You even have to look at the teams at the bottom that move up a little bit and ask yourself, is Toronto really that much better than them? You have players who have some championship experience on there, obviously with Siakam and OG and all that stuff, and I get that. But are they really better than those guys? I'm not sure. I think teams like Toronto's in the same position of like Atlanta, where they're kind of in the middle, and I don't think either of those teams are that good for a variety of reasons. So those teams, some teams are going to jump up. And I think one of those teams you mentioned, whether it's the Pacers, the Magic, I think the Magic actually probably the most likely to take that jump up. I can see the Magic more being a lock for a playing team than I could see Toronto. Toronto should be around there, but they could also not. Like that's the thing. And I think there's a lot of teams that are jumbled in that part of the East when you're talking about Atlanta, Toronto, Orlando. You put Washington in there, although it wouldn't shock me if they're a little bit worse. I'm going to also add Indiana. Any of those teams could get in the play-in, and any of those teams could be out of the play-in. None of that would shock me. I'd even mention Chicago in that too. None of that would shock me with those teams. They're all, they're meh teams, and some of them are stuck in the middle and trying to figure out, like Toronto, Chicago, and Atlanta, where do they want to go? So the problem is you don't want to be stuck in the middle without any flexibility. That's what you don't want to be. It's if you recognize you're in the middle, and I think what Messiah has to look at is, has this team and this group, are they capped out at where they are? And is it time to reset and rebuild around Scotty Barnes if we believe he is that dude? This year's an important year for Toronto. They're going to have to make that decision.
Absolutely. And once again, we're talking to sports anchor of the New York Post Sports and SNY TV, Dexter Henry. You can also find him over at WFAN 660 CBS Sports Radio as the update anchor over there. And he's also the host of the NBA Exchange. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're liking the content that you're watching right now. Dexter, let's talk about this move. I think this team has actually been making some very savvy moves, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
You get Gabe Vincent from Miami. I think I said this on Friday when we did our free agency live reactions. I said this is kind of like Mario Chalmers for LeBron James all over again, like a point guard that doesn't necessarily need to be on ball as much. He can knock down some shots when you need to. We saw what he did, especially from the mid-range, knocking down some threes. If you ask him to do a little bit of running the offense, it's okay. You don't necessarily need to rely on him that much, but you also know where you'll get from him defensively. Obviously, I'm not saying they're the exact same player, but I think that off-ball point guard role is what you're going to see a lot from Gabe Vincent on this team. I actually like that pickup. You also got D'Lo over there, who just re-signed. I know there's questions about him, but I think you could see Gabe Vincent probably getting a little bit more run over there. Who else did the Lakers sign? The Lakers have done a lot of moves right now.
They also got Jackson Hayes.
Jackson Hayes, yeah, that's a nice. I do like that pickup as well.
They brought back Rui Hachimura. They brought back back Austin Reeves, obviously. Yeah, man. I was just talking about this yesterday with my guy Michael Grady. I love the moves that they made.
They also got Taurean Prince too.
Taurean Prince. That I was forgetting about. I knew there was one other low-cost veteran that they liked.
And for all the Cam Hive out there, they got Cam Reddish.
Oh God. Here we go. And you know what? You saw this. Oh, now that Cam is with LeBron, it'll turn around. I do think Cam can look. Here's what I'll say for Cam Hive out there. We'll know a lot. All of y'all have been saying, "Oh, it's gonna happen." Didn't happen in Portland. Didn't happen. He should happen on this team where he's around some superstar talent and good players where all he has to do is play off of them. He should have the ability to do a little bit. I ain't expecting much, like some of you guys out there have expected. I'm not expecting much, but he should. But it's a fine low-cost signing for them. Bringing back Jared Vanderbilt, picking up his option, another good move. The Lakers, to me, why I like them too, Alex, is they clearly had a plan of what they wanted to do and the kind of players they want to bring back around LeBron, while also prioritizing on bringing back the guys they needed to. They had to bring back Rui Hachimura. I liked that trade when they had made it last year at the time. Austin Reeves, who's clearly shown to me he can be the third best player on the team and is a really good two-way player. I like Austin Reeves a lot. They brought him back. That was good. Look, you saw what worked when you reshaped the team last year, when you got Westbrook out of here, you made all those trades, and they're sticking with it. And I think the continuity for the Lakers and what they were able to do in reaching the Western Conference Finals is going to bode well for them. What LeBron needs at this stage in his career, you talked about Gabe Vincent, who can play off the ball and a little bit on the ball when you need to. D'Angelo Russell, I know he did not shoot the ball well in the Western Conference Finals. It was terrible. But they weren't going to do much better. Having those two guys at the point, I think, is fine. Taurean Prince, another good veteran who could knock down shots. Somebody could play well off of LeBron. I think that's really good. I think the Lakers understood what their identity was from this past postseason run. They're going to try to rebuild on it, limit LeBron's minutes. AD, it's really about the stars being. If the stars are healthy, I think they can be fine. Excuse me. But it's just, I think the role players around them are perfectly support what their stars need. It's just if LeBron and AD is healthy. Now, can they beat the Nuggets? I don't know about all that. But I do think that the Lakers can be a much better team throughout the regular season than they were last year because they actually have pieces that fit around their stars, and they clearly had a plan on setting up the roster in the right way. So I like what the Lakers did. I actually love what they did. I think they've had an A+ offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to read the depth chart for what they got right now, right? And this is not set in stone. This is just what ESPN has right now, just because a lot of moving pieces, a lot of names. But you got D'Lo, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis, Gabe Vincent, Jalen Hood, Shifiano, Taurean Prince, Rui Hachimura, Jackson Hayes, Wenyen Gabriel, Cam Reddish, and they got some, they got some players over there, man. They got some players. They got nice depth, a lot of wing depth to add around LeBron James. So, as you said, though, if they stay healthy, this is going to be a team that will be able to compete. Another team that I don't know if I like it. I'm also interested to see how it all shakes out as the Phoenix Suns, because they're just going all in with this roster. It is truly, salary cap does not mean a thing to me. I bought this team with Matt Ishbia. We're going all in, full steam ahead. Not only do you have Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, you go out there and get Eric Gordon. You're signing you get who else did you get? There's so many players. It's just
Josh Okogie, Yuta
Josh
Watanabe.
Okogie, yeah. Watanabe.
Watanabe.
I'm stuttering over his own name right now. I'm just impressed with what the Suns are doing right now. It's really just shocking to see all these players that it just seems like salary cap money doesn't matter to this team, and it's just funny. It's just funny to that,
I am not in love with what the Suns are doing. I'm gonna be. I did not like the Bradley Beal trade.
Diop, Damian Lee is back. I think Torrey Craig is still the last guy we're waiting on to see if he returns. Eubanks is over there, so you still got Campaign who's on the books. It's interesting, definitely interesting.
It's interesting. I don't love what the Suns have done because I didn't like the Bradley Beal move. I didn't like the. Here's the thing. This is my point about the Suns. And they've added some guys, and they have some okay guys that they've added. I do like Yuta Watanabe. I think that's good. Shoots the ball very well, especially from the corner three. He played with KD. I think that's good. Eric Gordon, I think, will be very helpful for them too. My problem with the Suns is it's a lot of nice bench players, but the supporting cast really around those three guys, their big stars, is not good. The problem with the Suns last year to me was two things. One, they didn't have enough depth. We saw that in the postseason, and then they went and added another max superstar. I don't call Beal a superstar. Another max star, who they added. That you were like, how are they going to fill out this roster? Okay, they're filling it out, but who do you trust there at point guard? I know Booker can play point guard a little bit, and he dished the ball well in the playoffs. Are you trusting Campaign? You know how you know they don't trust Campaign? Because they just brought in Darren Collison for a workout last week. That's how you know they don't trust Campaign. Frank Vogel's turning back the clock, trying to bring Darren Collison in here. So for me, another thing is, who's this team stopping? Their problem that you saw with them in the playoffs, even when they played the Clippers, even when they lost to the Nuggets, they can't stop anybody. It's not a good defensive team. They're going to be able to score. There's no doubt about that. They will get buckets. But can they stop anybody? I'm not in love with the Suns as much as some other people are. We'll see, excuse me, how that all plays out, but I'm just not in love with them. I do think some of these players they picked up have been good moves. Like I said, Yuta Watanabe, I think bringing Josh Okogie back. I think they need to bring Torrey Craig back. I do agree. I think that needs something that needs to happen. Although Torrey Craig may get some offers elsewhere for some teams looking for a big wing or somebody can stretch the floor a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, I'm not worried about Phoenix offensively. It's defensively, and do they have enough depth? And when they go to a second unit, do you really trust these players against some other team's second unit, which I'm not necessarily sure that they are better than? And I think that does matter in the playoffs. Like you can be a top heavy roster and have all this talent, but you need really good supporting players that know their roles, can execute in their roles. And some of the guys are nice, and some of the guys are that they signed. So they've done a lot, but I'm not sure they've done a lot. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I agree with you on that. Like they've done a lot. I do like Watanabe as a signing for the Suns. I think adding front court depth and shooting is good for this team. But to your point, where's the defense coming from? And I don't see where the defense, I don't see who they're going to stop. Yeah, they'll probably be able to put up 130, 140 points with this team, but you also got to play on the other side of the court as well. I'm with you. I'm not really in love with the Suns. I don't believe this. Maybe they do make an NBA finals, but I'm not even confident that they would win a finals, in all honesty, because I think as we've seen over the years, whether it's the Nuggets, whether it's even the Lakers when they won, Warriors, whoever, right? You need even the Raptors when they won. You have to have some depth. You have to have the capability of playing defense. Even when Miami made it to the finals this year, it wasn't because they were even though they shot well from three, it wasn't because they were an offensive juggernaut. It's that at moments they knew when to play hard-nosed defense, and that kept them alive for most of the games because they were able to slugfest some of these games. And unfortunately, when you run against a team like the Nuggets, who has a two-time MVP in Nikola Jokic, a team that really works well on offense with off-ball movement, making sure that their stars, whether it be Murray or Jokic, who can score in isolation, they just know how to get to those moments and find that type of rhythm. I think for a team like the Suns, having a lot of star power isn't necessarily great because with these, even with Ayton there, they all want to get touches. Everyone wants to feel like they got to score. Everyone feel that's how they feel like they're contributing. There's only so many touches to go around. So I'm very, I would be very cautious about the Suns moving forward, especially with injury history for Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant. Not sure.
Yes.
Not sure how that is all going to play out. But outside of those teams, I mean, there's some teams that we can just quickly run through that made some moves right now, just to wrap up the free agency. You had the Cavs who got Max Strus, re-signed Karis LeVert. Seems like they're trying to add more shooting and depth to their team. What do you think about the Cavs offseason so far?
I had somebody text me the other day, and they really texted me this. And after they signed Max Strus, they said to me, it's a fan, a Knicks fan. And he said, oh, the Cavs are now vaulted to the #1 team in the East. And I was like, what are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? No. Look, here's my thing with the Cavs. The Cavs needed to add shooting on the wing. They needed to do that. But I think the other thing that you saw from the Knicks series, they need to add toughness, right? They were just out-toughed by the Knicks. The Knicks, who didn't even have a healthy Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson was still playing on a bum ankle, just out-toughed them. And I think that's actually was more of a glaring need about the Cavs. I'm not really sure the Cavs got that much better. Also, Max Strus, he had a career year shooting the ball. I don't know if he shoots as well as he did this past year. Do I think they overpaid for Max Strus? Yes. I think we should beware when Miami is saying that, hey, there's a price we even have for our undrafted guys who we've developed and we won't go beyond that. Man, Miami generally doesn't get these things wrong. I think that's something to watch there. I don't think it's kind of like the Dillon Brooks thing. I don't think it'll be a bad overpay in 2 years, especially with the cap going up. But I'm also not sure this really helps them. They bring back Karis LeVert, right? You got some depth. I think they're a little bit better. And you got Georges Niang as well, too.
Right.
A little bit better in terms of stretching the floor. But my thing is, like, are the Cavs tough enough against the best team in the East? If they played the Knicks again, would you pick the Cavs? Would you? Do
no,
you really
I wouldn't.
think so?
Yeah,
I don't think.
Wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think you would. Would you take them against Boston in terms of what they can do. No, are you Philadelphia? Well, who knows what's going to happen with them? The
Actually,
Bucks.
you say Boston. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna say there. Like I think Boston losing their toughness and Marcus Smart. I think that's I
Mm,
think that's a little bit more closer than we actually may be thinking, rather than the Knicks. Because I think when you look at teams like the Heat, the Knicks, you got to have
yeah,
a little bit of a grittiness edge to you to really just overpower a team. I think losing Marcus Smart is, and even if they lose Grant Williams, you're losing a lot of that toughness identity in Boston with things that are going to get down to the wire. You need someone who's just going to not care, balls to the wall type of attitude. I think that makes a big difference.
it's funny. I would have probably felt better had the Cavs signed Grant Williams. It's funny you mentioned him because I think he's a guy that would have brought them a little bit more toughness while
Yes,
stretching the floor, what they were looking for, than a Max Strus. Not that Max Strus can't do that. Also, I need to see Max Strus shoot better than this for just in one season. I like to see that. It's funny. I look at his deal a lot differently. I love Gabe Vincent and what he got for the Lakers more than Max Strus and what he ended up getting with Cleveland. Um, I'm just not a big believer in Cleveland. I know I covered this from this angle, from the New York angle. I was very confident against the Knicks in them last year in the playoffs. I picked the Knicks in 6 in that series. They actually beat them in 5, obviously. There's something about Cleveland where I'm just like, they don't have that playoff toughness. That I think they're a good team. They're obviously talented in the backcourt. Evan Mobley is talented. It's just on the perimeter, I don't think they're tough enough in terms of defense. And I think that matters in the postseason. So, yeah, Cleveland, nice move. Let's see how it goes, but I'm not sure they got that much better. But maybe it's about internal development for them too. Maybe they learned from that playoff series. So I don't want to kill them in that sense, but I'm not sold that Cleveland got that much better.
absolutely. Let's talk about another team in that division. We could talk about the Chicago Bulls, who just signed Javon Carter. They also got they extended Kobe White. Pretty sure they also extended Vucevic as well, which makes sense just because you didn't want to lose him after you traded so many assets to get him. This is a team, I mean, we touched on it when we are talking about the Raptors. I'm not really impressed by their moves and what the team is, how it's currently constructed. I think this team is, I think this is more of a lock of a play-in team just because DeRozan, I like him as a talent. Zach LaVine, I like him as a talent. I think there's just still a lot of question marks. And can Kobe White be consistent enough on that team? Vucevic defensively is where you're going to have a concern as a 5 at the 5 spot. Patrick Williams, where is he going to be at in his development? Not really thrilled what the Bulls have done. I do like Javon Carter as like a backup point guard, but with Lonzo not looking to play the season just because of his knee issues, or is not going to play, I should say, Lonzo Ball not playing this upcoming season because of his knee issues. I'm not thrilled with what the Bulls are going to look like for this upcoming
I'm
season.
more I'm more convinced with the Bulls than I am even the Raptors of a team that absolutely needs to blow it up. Like they need to blow this up.
Mm.
And the first step they need to do that is trading Zach LaVine, because that's where they can get the most value. Moving on from DeRozan, this is a team to me that I don't think is going anywhere. It's currently constructed. A lot of it just sucks with some bad injury luck with Lonzo Ball. Because I think if Lonzo Ball was there, it changes a lot with that team and the ceiling of
Mm-hmm.
what that team could be. It just didn't happen. But you bring back Vucevic on a 3-year, $60 million deal. That's 20 per. That'll be fine and tradable down the road. And maybe that's why they brought it back. But I just don't see this team going much of anywhere, getting that much better. I just don't see it. I think their best player is a nice scorer. Well, no, the best player is actually DeMar DeRozan, not Zach LaVine, in my opinion. Zach LaVine is a nice scorer, but he does not give you much of anything else, which is why I've been telling Knicks fans for a long time, please do not give me the Zach LaVine stuff. They do not need that. They do not need this man. He is one-dimensional. I just think it's a team that's not well constructed. You mentioned Patrick Williams. What do you do with him? He's extension eligible. There's a lot of things you're thinking about with the Bulls, but I think they're a very blah team. Even though I've talked to Bulls fans who were like, this team is blah. They need to blow it up. And they're another team, I think, watch out for them at the deadline, like the Raptors. What are they going to do? The difference with the Raptors is the Raptors at least have some younger players who still have some upside in Siakam and OG that you can still believe in. And they have a Scotty Barnes, where I think they're in a little bit of a different position. But the Bulls, nah, man, it's time to blow this up. Javon Carter in the backcourt, you mentioned, nice because you can play him in some lineups that can be really good defensively. With Alex Caruso, I think that can be interesting too. They need more defense on the perimeter. That's definitely helpful for them, but I don't think this team is going much of anywhere, honestly.
I agree. And another team that isn't going anywhere, but I feel like it's just frisky is the Wizards. You bring back Kyle
Oh
Kuzma,
yeah.
who got paid.
Whew.
Jordan Poole, Kuzma are going to be battling to see who can chuck more shots. Hopefully Tyus Jones can get that under control because he's a good point guard that can just, traditional point guard, control the rock, get everyone into rhythm. But this team, another young team that, looking to me is like a 30 win, maybe low 40 win team. If things swing right, they could be a playing team and do maybe make a little bit of noise, but not really thrilled with what the Wizards did either.
I think the Wizards. I wasn't shocked they brought back Kuzma because they got to spend some cap space. I don't think the market was there for Kuzma,
Mm-hmm.
so it made sense. I don't think Kuzma will be happy there long. I really don't. Jordan Poole is going to jack away with his inefficient self, and he's going to love every part of being in DC and being able to jack. I think the Wizards might be worse than that. I think the Wizards might be one of the worst teams in the league this year, but they do have some flexibility. I think they can move off of Kuzma about 2 years down the road here. Trey, we talked about the point guard and Trey Jones being able to, keep it steady for them. You saw them just trade Monte Morris.
Tyus Jones, his brother.
Tyus Jones. Sorry, I said Trey Jones. San Antonio. Sorry, wrong team. Tyus Jones. They'll have some stability, but I don't think that team is stopping anybody. I think they'll be a very bad defensive team. I feel bad for head coach Wes Unseld Jr. because I thought he came in and did a decent job a couple of years ago, getting them off to a good start, and then some of the talent he's had there has been stripped away. So I think they're looking to be bad. They want to be bad. They want to get a high draft pick. It wouldn't shock me if they won somewhere between 23 and 27 games. I got them lower than you, Alex, here. But yeah, nothing they did really moved the needle. I think Washington's going to be a bad team, but they need to be. I think Washington's in the spot they need to be. I think they know exactly what they're trying to do and where they're trying to go in their rebuild. So I actually like what they're doing in terms of their journey. They know they're trying to be bad. They ain't trying to be good. They know it.
I agree with you on that. Other moves that just kind of felt like were a walk. Kyrie going back to the Mavs. They also got Seth Curry. Another move that just kind of felt like was going to happen was the Bucks bringing Middleton back and Brook Lopez. Clippers bringing back Russell Westbrook. Felt like that was a lock to happen as well. And then you also have the Warriors re-signing Draymond Green. And you also have the Brooklyn Nets extending Cam Johnson as well. I feel like all those moves to me were just, and the Pelicans re-signing Herb Jones. I felt like all these moves were just written on the wall. Most of these teams couldn't afford to lose these guys, especially the Mavs if you're trying to keep Luka happy and trying to compete. And same thing goes for the Bucks if you're trying to keep Giannis happy and trying to compete. Middleton and Brook Lopez are just so key to what they do. As for the Nets, you just traded for Cam Johnson, and Kyle Bridges. You can't let either one of those guys just leave at all or trade any one of those guys. So I feel like those teams in general, they're just trying to stay packed and just get it ready to compete for this upcoming season. What are your thoughts about those teams?
Yeah, I'm with you on all that. I think these were moves that were pretty much expected, and they're fine. Kyrie, I think what was interesting about the Kyrie deal that I found interesting is that he got the 3 years. I'm not sure he got that far. He has a player option, which I couldn't believe they gave him in the third. But look, they're trying to keep Luka happy. As you said, I get it. I actually liked the Mavericks offseason for the most part and what they did in the draft. But, I didn't like how they ended the season at the end of last year, not trying to win and get in the play. And that was disgusting. But what they've done so far, it's fine. Like the thing with Kyrie is, has he learned? He got the bag now. I think he learned the market that he thought was out there for him was not out there for him. The question with him is, will he show up to work? That's the question with Kyrie. Nobody knows if he's going to show up to work. Nobody knows what Kyrie's going to do. We have no idea how this is all going to play out, but he got his money. It's a win for him, 3 years. The Mavericks didn't want to give him the max. Look, think about that, guys. Kyrie didn't get the max. Fred VanVleet did. The Rockets wouldn't want to give him. Nobody wanted to give Kyrie the max because they don't trust him. But I was a little shocked he got 3 years more than 2. But look, we'll see what happens down there in Dallas and how they fill out the roster around those 2 guys. But they at least have some stability for Luka going forward. He has a co-star, and we'll see how that all works out.
Absolutely. And then Dexter, let's talk about all these extensions that's been happening. All right.
Yeah.
All these extensions. But before that, once again, we were talking to Dexter Henry. He is the host over, or I should say the lead anchor over at SNY and the New York Post Sports. You can also find him as the update anchor for CBS Radio WFAN 660. And you can also find him as the host for the NBA Exchange. Dexter, these extensions are insane. Everyone's just getting extended right now, whether it's Sabonis, Tyrese Halliburton, as you mentioned earlier in the show, Anthony Edwards. Everyone's just getting the bag now. You got Desmond Bane, who also got the bag. Everyone's getting the bag at this time. With the CBA rules coming out, like we know that it really doesn't get into effect for 2 years for that second apron, being restricted and trading some of your draft capital and everything that goes with it moves forward from there on. What are your thoughts about seeing everyone getting the bag this summer?
Yeah, all these extensions were fine to me, especially the young guys who are getting extended off their rookie contracts. They were fine. I know some people were a little shocked about Desmond Bane, and I don't know why. Look, he's the second best player on that team. He has been fantastic as being the number 30th pick in the draft. He is one of the best shooters in the league. He's played solid defense. This is a person you give him that money, you build around. That is going to be a steal in a couple of years. Tyrese Halliburton, no brainer for the Pacers. They were going to give him the bag. I'll even say Anthony Edwards, who is the best player on the Minnesota Timberwolves. You had to give him the bag. Now, what's key, that team is the most interesting to me because they have 3 max players now, and Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Tyrese Halliburton. Excuse me, not Tyrese, Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, the youngest player, in my opinion, is the best player on the team. They're paying 2 bigs a max contract. They're paying a lot of money for the big man position. They also signed Naz Reid. They got to decide how they want to shape the team around Anthony Edwards because Cat ain't that guy. Rudy Gobert, he might get punched by teammates. We don't know what's going on there. So I think that how they shape around this team and the flexibility they have is going to decide. But all these guys with the second apron coming, these young guys that you're extending off of, getting them in now to these contracts are absolutely good. LaMelo Ball in Charlotte as well, too. The Kings with Sabonis, that was interesting to me because they restructured like the Pacers did with Miles Turner and then extended him off of that. So this is the second time we've seen this in a couple of months. That's good. They had to keep Sabonis there, foundational player. There's not any of these extensions that I think was a bad extension. I think it's fine. I think all the guys, the money they got is fine. LaMelo and Anthony Edwards getting the max, super max extensions that he could off their rookie extensions. They're fine. I think they're all fine. A lot of people getting the bag. I think the next wave of extensions we see with players who are extension eligible, like Emmanuel Quickly with the Knicks and some others, those are going to be interesting to see what some of those guys get who aren't max guys. What they get will be very interesting to see. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, it will. I agree with you on the sense of like these guys are deserving all of that. It's just I just think about team building in the future, right? Like you're just locking yourself in for things that we like. I know you want to keep the young core that they've shown that they've can produce. It's just weird where it seemed like everyone's like, be cautious about your books moving forward. You have no idea what this cap can do yet. Don't let's just wait and see what happens. But everyone's like, money, whatever.
Yeah. The thing is, you're never going to let these guys, if you have a star, right? If you got a star on a rookie contract, there's no way you're letting that guy get to
for sure
restricted free agency, right? Like there's no way you're gonna have him be have him not to get there. You want to keep that guy as long as you can. So LaMelo, what else does Charlotte have? They got to keep LaMelo. Anthony Edwards, I think it's the same thing, but that's why that team's more interesting to me than all the other teams that signed their young star. They already have so much money tied up into 2 guys. So they're the one team where it's like you didn't have a lot of flexibility here. What are you going to do? They have to make some tough decisions. They got to get off one of those bigs because otherwise they're going to be paying a lot of money in terms of the tax and that second apron for a team that's not really that good. What you have to say is if you're paying all that money with Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, is that a championship team the way they're constructed right now? Probably not. Those are the teams that hurts. The Indianas, the Charlottes, they got to lock in their star guy. It's not going to hurt them as much because those teams still have a lot of flexibility. I'm not worried about them. It's Minnesota's the one that I worry about where I'm just like, and you could say to some degree Sacramento because you're wondering to yourself, is Sabonis the guy? Is he the right fit with Fox? I think they'll be fine. It's kind of how they build around them. But yeah, you're right, Alex. There's been a lot about stuff about being cautious about the money. But sure, we boys sure did see a lot of money spent in these extensions. Again, some teams I think they had to was no doubt, no brainers for them. Minnesota's the team to watch with their finances. I think really in the next year or two, what they do with their finances, because I think they're spending a lot of money for a team that's just okay.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, Dexter. It's just for me, once again, it's just so interesting how everyone's like making the new CBA be taboo, and then everyone's like, spending. And look, Tyrese Halliburton, you extend him. Anthony Edwards, you extend him, even with the questions they have over in Minnesota right now. Domantas Sabonis, after we did for the Kings this season, you extend him. You don't want to lose these type of guys. I get that. You need your star players. You need your star players. It's just interesting where we don't know where things are moving in the future, and everyone's just we're walking in right now with what we're seeing for signings this offseason. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm just more perplexed. The Suns really have just altered my thinking on how to look at everything right now because they're just spending consistently. But let's move along to a new topic. James Harden, then we can end with our Knicks after this. James Harden wanting out of Philly. We know this. It's not shocking. I don't know where he ends up. Where do you think he ends up?
I think he ends up with the Clippers. I think he'll end up with. Yeah, I think he ends up with the Clippers.
You think Paul George gets traded in that deal?
No, because I don't think that would make sense for the Clippers. If he's going to go to the Clippers, he's going to play with Paul George and Kawhi. Now, can the Clippers give back? To me, it's almost like the Dame situation, Alex, because what are the Clippers going to give up? What do the Sixers want, right? And when we're talking, the Sixers are going to want a young player who's probably controllable. So think Terrence Mann for them. Maybe you give him Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, although Norman Powell makes $30 million per year for the next 3 years. So that's really interesting in how that goes. They can get some players that can help them now. And I don't want to sidetrack Harden here, but when it comes to Harden right now, Philly, the whole thing I'm thinking about is how does Joel Embiid feel about all this? Because he can't be happy with all the process and the drama and the stuff that went down with Ben Simmons. And now Harden wants out of town. Harden learned very quickly he wasn't going to get the market that he thought. Houston didn't want him, nor did they want to pay him the max to bring him back there. There really isn't a market out there for Harden to get the money that he thinks, which is why he had to opt in and now has to try to work in a trade. Harden never seems to be happy. And I supported him wanting to get out of Brooklyn. I understood why he did all that because Kyrie wouldn't show up to work. I didn't blame him for that. But he asked out of Houston. He asked now out of Philly. It's like, where are you going to be happy, bro? Like at some point, we're like, what's going to go on? But I think Los Angeles makes a lot of sense for him. And I think it could be a decent trade partner with the Sixers. It's just how much hardball is Daryl Morey and the Sixers going to play to get what they want. That the Clippers, don't have a lot of draft capital to trade, but they can give them, a couple of young players. They could give them some guys off with decent high salary that can help them win. So in Norman Powell, like I said, Marcus Morris, but or maybe Robert Covington as well too. But I think he ends up with the Clippers. That just makes a lot of sense. You've heard some smoke about the Knicks kicking the tires and being interested. I don't see that happening. I don't think he's a good fit. Yeah, I see you, Alex. You're like, nah.
No.
It doesn't make sense. I had I had John Shashmemsky on my show the other day. We were talking about it, and he was just like, hell no. This doesn't make any sense about it at all. And I don't think it does, but I definitely think it makes sense. But I also wouldn't shock me if Portland gets involved and there's some kind of 3-team deal with Dame where you can see those guys routed to where they want to go that can help. So we'll see. But if I had to put my money on it, I'd probably say the Clippers. I think he ends up with the Clippers.
I feel like the Clippers is like the only sensible option if Harden wants to compete. I mean, there were rumors that he wanted to go back to Houston. I don't see how you can make that work now with how you pay Fred VanVleet. You now have Dillon Brooks, unless the Rockets are willing to give up a lot of those young players and draft capital to even try to make that work, but they don't even have the money. It's just a lot of money to even make that salary exchange work for James Harden. So I don't see how that can work. So probably the Clippers, and I agree with you. I think we will see a 3-team deal that involves Miami, Portland, or something of that along those lines with Philly. Maybe it's even a 4-team deal to try to swing just to get everyone happy in this. Maybe you could try to construct something like that just so that everyone gets what they need out of the deal so that everyone's happy, whether it's Clippers, whether it's them getting Harden, Philly getting their draft picks, whatever in return with whatever players they get, Dame going down to Miami, and whoever, like maybe you get Portland, say, hey, Portland, do you have anything you can throw in this deal and we can give you something in return to be competitive? I don't know. That's just kind of how it looks to me. But I think the Clippers is like the right spot for James Harden.
Yeah,
all right, Dexter.
sounds about right.
Let's wrap this thing up. Our Knicks, they made some moves.
Yeah.
They traded Obi Toppin to the Indiana Pacers for 2 future second rounders to create salary cap space to get Dante DiVincenzo, and then Derrick Rose also goes to the Memphis Grizzlies. What are your thoughts about all of the Knicks offseason moves thus far?
It's fine. I think the Knicks offseason moves are fine. I like the Dante DiVincenzo signing. I think he's a good player. I think you can never have enough good two-way players. He can shoot the ball. He can defend. The Knicks, what you're seeing, I think that needs to be talked about with the Knicks in the last couple of years. And Knicks fans aren't used to this. We're seeing patience and competence, guys. That's actually a good thing. You're seeing a culture that players want to be a part of, whether it's the Nova Knicks culture. Yeah, you got Jalen Brunson. Yeah, you got Josh Hart. Yeah, you got Dante DiVincenzo. They all play together, but they like that culture. These are guys are winning players. A guy in DiVincenzo who's won. I think that's good. Essentially, you have to look at this as they traded Obi Toppin for DiVincenzo and 2 second-round picks. I think that's basically the way you have to look at this. I liked Obi Toppin. I was a fan of Obi Toppin. I know there's a segment of Knicks fans that wanted Obi Toppin to play more. I get all that. It wasn't going to happen. And this isn't, I think people look at what happened with Obi as some sort of indictment or slight on the Knicks. I don't think it is. It's just a tough circumstance. They drafted him 8th overall 3 years ago. I've heard from people, the Knicks at the time were looking to move Julius Randle at that time. Julius Randle then goes out and has an all-NBA season, all-star season, and that sort of blocks the playing time for Obi. Then Julius Randle has his second all-NBA and all-star season in 3rd years this past year. Obi wasn't going to play here. This isn't failure by the Knicks. It's just Julius Randle turned into a better player than they imagined. Thibodeau's a fan of him, and it is what it is. He wasn't a big fan of Obi Toppin, and he would have liked more from him defensively, and the two weren't going to play together. It's fine. Would you have liked more than 2 second-round picks, for the 8th overall pick? Yes, but you weren't going to get that because when the Knicks talked to other teams and teams were interested in Obi Toppin, they would say, Knicks could say, yo, we love Obi Toppin. We want more of that. We want a 1st-round pick for them. And they're going to be like, yo, but y'all don't play him. If y'all love him so much, why don't you play him? So the Knicks didn't really have much leverage there. I think they got the best they could get for him now. Also should be noted, they get a $6.8 million trade exception. That matters for their flexibility and what they can use down the road or if it's another trade. And I think as Zach Brazilla was telling me, as we were speaking yesterday, don't be surprised if the Knicks are not looking to make another trade to still add a big wing. I'm not sure they're actually done here. So I think that's something to look at. He mentioned OG Anunoby, who I know some Knicks fans have been interested in. I think there could be some other names. The Knicks are in a good spot. Sometimes I think fans want, as I said this before earlier in the show, Alex, they think every team is one deal or one player away. It's not how it works in the NBA. A lot of times it's slow, steady, internal development. That's what you're seeing with the Knicks. We saw RJ, who's widely criticized. 7 of the 11 playoff games for the Knicks, he played pretty good. This team could get better by adding good players that fit the culture and they have flexibility. There's nobody on the Knicks really that is on a bad contract. These are all tradable contracts. It's another good spot to be in. Their 2 best players, Brunson and Randle, aren't on max deals. Brunson is vastly underpaid right now. He'll get it. He'll get his money. He'll get his money after next summer for sure. No doubt about that. But I think the Knicks are in a good spot, man. I really do. Like, are they championship contention level yet at this point? In my eyes, no. Could they be on the cusp of that? Yes. Let the Knicks play. Let's see how this team plays. They might go into the season with the roster as it is now, and we'll see what it is by the trade deadline. But the DiVincenzo move is a good move to me. As I said, another good player who's a two-way player. You could never have enough of those on your roster, and they have the flexibility to make a trade for the right star when that comes along to pair with Jalen Brunson. I don't think the Knicks have to panic. I love how they're not panicking. I think they're making very smart moves. And let's just hope it stays that way, because this is the most competence we've seen from the Knicks in probably over 2 decades. So I'll take it. I think the moves are fine. I don't know how you feel, Alex, but I was fine with the Dante DiVincenzo move. I think it's the Knicks moves have been fine. It's nobody's jumping for joy, but I think you should be okay with the competence. Competence matters, so you should be okay with that.
Well said, Dexter. And I think the last part is where it is. It's no one has to jump for joy for this. Like, it's not necessarily like we finally did it, we got the star. I think what there should be, like, be happy, content with the Knicks are moving in a slow, progressive manner, just trying to accumulate good players, right? Because CP and I discussed this on Saturday at midnight when we broke this all down. Obi being traded, getting Dante DiVincenzo. It's, you need, when you get more good players, it means other players become expendable. It's like, okay, you want to go make a star, you want to go make a move for a star. Okay, well, you want to make sure you don't lose your depth and you have enough good players that if you do have to trade some good players, you're not just going to be barren of like your war chest, right? So you can trade the draft capital, even though it could be questionable for these protected picks, how they're valued now, just because we see that it just keeps getting kicked down the road. If you're worried about trading someone like Emmanuel Quickly or Quentin Grimes, someone like Dante DiVincenzo gives you that reassurance, like, okay, we're not going to lose that much of a beat because we still have some talent at the wing guard position, whatever you want to call it. I like the Dante DiVincenzo move. For me, it's always just, the question is like fit, playing time. Where does it all come? Because you have a lot of guards. You got Brunson, who is going to be locked in for his minutes. You got Grimes. You got Quickly. You got now Dante DiVincenzo. You can throw RJ in there. You got Josh Hart. It's just a lot of players at that position. I'm curious to see how it all works out. I know that RJ and Hart have played small ball 4 for the second units. That's probably going to happen. Maybe Tibbs goes more Jericho and Isaiah Hartenstein. We've seen that before in the past. I'm just curious to see how it all works out with Tom Thibodeau, because I think when I look, it's not just the players, it's also the coach and how does the coach put this puzzle together. I see Tibbs is very like regimented in his thinking and how he like deploys lineups and stuff like that. Not necessarily a lot of free flowing creativity. That's where my hangup is as him as a coach, especially on the offensive side. Defense, we know what we're going to get, even though some of it can just be a little redundant too, like the offense. That's where my thinking is. But if you're looking from like a talent acquisition standpoint, I think it's good. Trading Obi Toppin, I think a lot of it just gets muddied. It just gets muddied here. I think fans see that Obi can contribute, right? We see where his strengths are that were not utilized, and he can contribute. No, I don't think many are saying that if there definitely are that say he could be better than Randall and so forth. But I think if you're for most people, it's like he can contribute. You see the qualities. He didn't get an opportunity, as you said. When you have an all NBA player, all-star in front of you, most improved, it's very hard. And I can understand that as a coach, your options could be like, I'm going to play my best player, right? I'm not going to go deviate too far off the line from this. Like, he's good. He's going to play. He showed up. He showed up and showed out. That's it. And Tibbs has his trust for veterans. So with all that said, it's a lock for Randall. And it's for Obi, I think, to take it back even further. Remember, he got injured during, I forget if it was preseason or regular season. He played 23 minutes, got injured. Randall starts to get into a groove of being this all NBA type caliber player. Same thing kind of happened this year again, too. Obi gets injured playing against Atlanta. Randall starts to get into a rhythm in December and goes on a tear. So it happens. So it's unfortunate luck. Things need to break right for you in sports in order for you to shine. So nothing but hope Obi has a good career, that he's able to thrive and get the playing time he wants over in Indiana. So nothing with that. Nothing wrong there. But that's my take on the situation.
No,
I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move for the Knicks for all standpoints.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up another good point about the flexibility that they'll have in terms of having a lot more good players and being able to make a trade. And I think it's right for you to question, what's it going to look like with playing time as you add another guard, 6'5" guard to this rotation. I really still will keep my eyes on. I think the Knicks are going to be working on trying to make a trade. I don't have any inside information on that, but I do think they know that they need another big wing. Obviously, they don't have a traditional backup power forward right now. So that'll be interesting. But if you look at what's going on with the assets and talent they've acquired, there could be a trade, or it could be at the trade deadline. Like I said, that's coming down the road. I just think if you're a Knicks fan, you got to like the last 2 out of the last 3 years they've been in the playoffs. The culture seems to be very good. Sure, you can question things about the coach. I have some of the same questions you do. You and I have talked about this many times. But I think the culture is good. And that's the first step in becoming a good organization that can compete for championships, is setting the culture. We talked about this at the top of the show with Houston, setting the culture. Are the Knicks doing that? And I think if you're a Knicks fan, you're doing that. Don't give me this, oh, they haven't won since 73. I want a championship tomorrow. That doesn't happen. Nobody turns around from being like the worst team to just winning a championship. We've seen that once with the Boston Celtics, with the trades they made. That is an anomaly. That does not happen at all. It's steady and slow, and the Knicks are progressing in the right space. And I think when they're able to make a move that works for them and their culture, they will. But right now, Dante DiVincenzo wanted to be here. The reason he wanted to be here is culture's been pretty good. That stuff matters, guys.
On a cheap deal.
That stuff matters. On a cheap deal. Right, on a tradable deal, Alex. That stuff matters. And if the Knicks keep doing that and keep acquiring good players, as you said, when they do have to make a trade, the cupboard's not going to be bare. The cupboard's not going to be bare. You're gonna still have talent, and you're still going to have some assets to make another move that you need to fill out certain things that you need. So I think the team building is actually going in the right way. Is it the perfect roster? No, it's not right now. But I think team building and development is actually working just fine. And if you're a Knicks fan, I think you just have to be, if you're a rational Knicks fan, because there's irrational fans in every fan base, you got to be happy with that. And I think things are going to be okay. Things are going to be okay.
Absolutely, Dexter. I agree with you 100%. And Dexter, I appreciate your time coming on the NBA report. Thank you for coming through. Man. Please let our listeners know where they can find you if you got any upcoming work.
Yeah, everybody can find me on the SNY YouTube channel, the New York Post YouTube channel. My work is there. I'm working there every weekend. Sometimes you see the guys from here in the NBA Report, Alex and CP. They're on with me, guys from Knicks Fan TV. I always have them on. So you find me there. You can follow me on Twitter at DHenryTV. And Alex, thank you for the time to have me on the show. I love what you and CP are doing with the show. I'm a big fan of it. I'm a fan of what you guys are doing all the time. To everybody out there, support independent media. I'm always a big person on that. That's why I have the guys come on with me whenever they can, because that's how I got my start. And I always support these guys and what they do. So hit that thumbs up button for your boys and continue to support them. Because I love what y'all do, Alex. So keep up the good work, man.
Appreciate you, Dexter, as always. And make sure to check out Dexter's work. He does phenomenal work anywhere you go, whether it's the NBA Exchange, SNY TV, New York Sports, WFAN. Dexter gives you 110% effort, quality performance, quality breakdowns every single day. But NBA Nation, make sure to help us out, as Dexter said. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're still growing this channel. Make sure to tune in. Make sure to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend. Okay, we're growing this channel. We're trying to make sure that fans can enjoy getting the breakdown, the analysis, and not necessarily all the talking head stuff that you get from Stephen A. Smith, just yelling and screaming. We want to have a dialogue. We want to have constructive conversation about NBA teams. So make sure to check out the NBA Report. Also, you can download all these podcasts. We're on all audio listening platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Alexa, Stitcher, you name it. We are there. Also, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. You can go check us out over there. Dexter, once again, thank you so much for coming on. And to everyone tuning in, appreciate all you. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. We'll catch you later. We out.